And that's what I'm trying to teach you. I'm trying to teach you, yes, organize around issues. Use mobilization and channel that to organization. We should have learned that. I hope you saw that lesson learned in the George Floyd protests, right? Millions of people went out on the streets. Millions of people took clubs and tear gas and rubber bullets and arrests and beatings to protest for George Floyd. But where did that energy go? Isn't anyone else getting tired of the "I'm a leftist, but Israel has a right to defend itself" that's all over the internet after Kamala's loss? Those people aren't leftists. They're not leftists. By the way, leftist has become a meaningless label. All right, here's the reality. A lot of people call themselves leftists as a placeholder for liberal because liberal is an extremely unpopular ideology. And so they're trying to adhere to the left because the left has the credibility of like populism, of being anti-establishment, of being challenging to the status quo. And so liberals are trying to pollute the left with their filth. And it's very important that we draw that thick line between ourselves and liberals. Liberals are not left-wing. Liberals are servants of the status quo. They just think the system that we have is good. And they're just bad. They're just, you need to shove them and say, identify as a liberal. Identify as a liberal. You're not a leftist. Just stop. Just stop. You're a liberal.
Well, Ryan, I want to ask you this. As somebody who covers, has been covering this, obviously, you wrote your book about this period of time and like the progressive movement, and also you're like, you're in media, and AOC is like an interesting character because I think that, there's something about like the second we put this video up, like we're going to get comments every which way about it. People get very, very passionate about talking about AOC, and I think it's true that she is embedded in Washington, but I wanted to sort of ask your perspective.
Revolutionary War is an antitoxin that only eliminates the enemy's poison, but also purges us of our own filth. Mao had a way with words. He really did.
On like the ways that she's embedded in Washington, is it kind of like social and structural within the Democratic Party, or are we also talking about votes? Because I think that sometimes there are like two different sides of politics that are missed. And I talk to folks and they'll have this perspective that AOC's, voting, to give a bunch of money to Israel and like standing against like the other DSA members and stuff, which is not entirely accurate. There are some
right. No. And that's not really accurate at all. Her voting record and say like a Jamal Bowman or Rashida Tlaib's voting record is pretty similar. In fact, on that famous Iron Dome vote back in 2021, Rashida Tlaib was a no, AOC was a no, and then switched to present, and Jamal Bowman was a yes. And I think you had 9 people who voted no on that. But often, often she's one of the no votes. Like you're right to point out that like it's not her voting record where you would situate her as embedded in Democratic Washington. It's more that she just and like many people who were coming to Congress, like had no. It's a new experience, right? There are new pressures on them. You've got the leadership. The party leadership, then you've got the Republican Party, which is for a lot of Democrats in blue seats, that's a new phenomenon. Mm-hmm. Like you spend your entire political life and awakening fighting with like Joe Crowley or Chuck Schumer or Hillary Clinton. And those are the kind of entire contours of your fight. Then you get to Washington and all of a sudden there's this whole other party. And for some people, that hits really hard. I think Cori Bush was really punched in the face with it. Like if you noticed, she was sworn in 2 years after AOC, which means that one of her first moments as a member of Congress was January 6th, mm-hmm. And she was you could tell she was scarred by that. Jamal Bowman, he was telling me about during orientation. He and Cori Bush are sitting down. They look over and like there's Marjorie Taylor Greene, and there's a whole bunch of other people. They're like, are these people armed? Like, and this is a whole new political force that they're dealing with. And Cori Bush's first measure as a sitting member of Congress was a resolution to expel, Republicans who'd been involved in some way with January 6th, which, isn't the kind of thing that she ran on. But I think like people don't appreciate what it's like to be confronted with that party. And when the squad first went to Washington, elected in 2018, January 2019, they're sworn in, Donald Trump's still president. And it's almost boring to like from the outs for a lot of people on the left to like think about Donald Trump. Like it's more exciting to kind of take on the Hillary Clinton wing of the Democratic Party. Those maybe even more easier to beat. Mm-hmm. The like victory is closer at hand. But their day-to-day life is more expansive.
You kind of alluded to it, but the Bowman and Bush lesson, with AOC, I've always kind of said, like, you can only expect her to be as heroic as the constellation around her. And if, say, two of the members are fighting for their lives, like Bush and Bowman were, and ultimately lost with a large amount of campaign spending, what do you say, like, how does their loss factor into these things, Ryan?
I mean, I would say it's not just their loss. And
Tlaib and Lee are the only worthwhile in the squad. Oh, my Lord. Someone save me from the internet. Save me from the internet. When you think about the people that voted for Social Security or Medicare or the 13th Amendment or the 14th Amendment or the 15th Amendment, do you think those guys, gals, most of these people were guys, were worthwhile? Like, what does that mean? What does that fucking mean? This is what I'm talking about. Everybody is a fucking fan. Stop being a fucking fan. The only thing you should be asking yourself is this person going to be someone that I can get to vote for a position that will actually materially advance the causes I believe in? Most of the time, the answer is going to be, with AOC, 99% of the time or 95% of the time, the answer of that is going to be yes. That's all you need to know. Is she the person that you trust the most? Is she the person that you make the president of your movement or the leader of your movement? Probably not. But there's this kind of like fandom of AOC where people got involved in politics in, between 2016 and 2024. And they look at AOC, and AOC is the millennial congresswoman who got famous on social media. And so people got these weird parasocial attachments. And when you have parasocial attachments, you get parasocially, disappointed. It happens eventually. I'm sure it happens to people with me. People invent all sorts of shit they think I did to them or that I did behind the scenes that actually proves Mike's he's actually a bad guy. You see, I think I know things about Mike. And it's like, no, stop it. You're being mentally ill. Stop being a fucking fan and start thinking about power. And power is getting the American state to do what you fucking want. And so instead of focusing on the fifth most left-wing congresswoman, because she's a 30-something-year-old young woman who's big on social media, and you could get a lot of likes by going, AOC bad, do something else.
And my book goes through the 2022 cycle, really in depth as well, which is where this tactic of, spending millions and millions of dollars in Democratic primaries was tried out for the first time. And not so losing Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman is big. And it would be cool if Jamal Bowman runs against Richie Torres.
No.
Because he's really from the Bronx.
Oh yeah. This is,
I think it'd be a competitive race. It'd be really interesting. But so losing those two is huge for the small group that is the squad. But in 2022, they lost a ton of members of Congress who were coming in kind of riding the wave that they had started in 2018 and 2020. So they would have had a much bigger caucus, but they were in caucus, squad caucus or whatever. But AIPAC was able to stop a ton of them in primaries, and in the process, were able to get a bunch of others who at the time were leaning towards joining them to kind of step back and say, you know what, actually, we're not going to, this is a little bit too much. And it was really May of 2021 when this kicked off, because that was the last time that Israel launched a war.
By the way, that's exactly what I predicted would happen with Sam Cedar in our debate. Just this point. This is exactly what I predicted to Sam Cedar. So in the summer of 2020, I said, Sam, I'm leaning away from supporting Biden because when Biden comes in, the first thing he's going to do is he's going to work with the far right of the Democratic Party, and they're going to try to purge the left. And they're going to install anti-left wingers in every position of power they can to try to stymie any kind of progress within the Democratic Party, to lock it down for the neoliberal right. And that is exactly what happens in coordination with what? A fascist foreign states, double agents.
War on Gaza. And more than a dozen Democrats went down to the House floor for an hour, booked an hour of time. And it wasn't just the squad, but a whole bunch of Democrats parading through and giving these speeches while Israel was at war with Gaza, just lambasting the government and calling for an arms embargo. And nothing like that had ever been seen on the floor of the House of Representatives before, especially not in the midst of a hot war. You might get a little stray criticism about human rights abuses way after it's over. But to have that kind of thundering criticism from the House floor while it's going on from such a sizable bloc, to have rank and file members of Congress defending Rashida Tlaib, the only woman Palestinian member of Congress, Palestinian American member of Congress, shook AIPAC. And they decided that's when
the media was saying that about Corbyn, who didn't purge anyone. That was his mistake. If you're a left winger, what you have to do is first of all, you need to sniff out the betrayers and you need to ruthlessly purge them. The second thing you need to do is step on the organs of resistance for propaganda. If Bernie Sanders won the presidency and he let Nancy Pelosi remain the Speaker of the House without a fight, he would have been a one-term president and he would have been unsuccessful, right? If Bernie Sanders had won and he hadn't gone after aggressively Fox News and right-wing talk radio, then he would have been fucked up. You have to go after the organs of the opposition. You can't just waltz in there like a fucking rube and think that they're not going to use every tool they have at their disposal to fuck you up.
We're going to start spending millions. One of the most kind of important victories that got very little attention was they decided they were going to go after Andy Levin. Andy Levin is this Michigan congressman who was he's a scion of a political dynasty. Carl Levin and Sandy Levin, or his father and uncle, senator and Ways and Means chairman. And he himself was president of a synagogue, called himself a liberal Zionist. And when Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar would be getting attacked, he would come to their defense. And he would say, look, as a synagogue president, as a liberal Zionist, let me say that what they are saying is valid. It is not anti-Semitic. It needs to be taken into account. The criticisms they're making are entirely legitimate, and Israel needs to deal with that, and rather than trying to silence all of these critics. And they were able to knock him out. And so, without voices like that, it really did change the dynamic in October 2023 when the next one started.
We've been, very supportive of Tlaib's approach on this past year, not endorsing Biden, but sort of emphasizing, look, we want to beat Republicans. From a moral standpoint, I approve of that. Politically, what's your judgment of how that's played out? And is there any sort of pitfalls we should be worried about? Is the party going to come for her? What's your assessment of that?
It's really interesting that they recognize how thoroughly well she represents her district. No amount of effort from AIPAC has been able to produce a primary.
Here's the thing. The money isn't the only thing. Money is important, especially in congressional races. That's actually probably where money is the most effective, is at the congressional level, because people don't, at a given point, you're not going to get more than 50% of the people to really have a strong opinion about their congressperson in a district. So when you have the ability to pump a bunch of money in to a race, especially before a primary, you could really, really kind of control the way people think about individuals by, using paid advertising. Money at the congressional level, $25 million in a congressional primary, that's going to be hard to beat. That being said, it isn't everything. And the more races the left is running in, that's going to spread even AIPAC thin. Like, there's only so much money that could be wrung out of Israeli Americans to go after the squad. If there's 100 strong left-wing candidates, AIPAC is not going to be able to come up with that kind of money. They just can't.
A challenge to her that would be remotely threatening. Anybody who they recruited would have to.
I think the problem they have that I have with things like Justice Democrats and the strategy is they should not be an incumbent protection racket. This is the way it should work. Justice Democrats should just be about taking out the enemy. And the incumbents should be about, they should have each other's backs. Like AOC and all the existing sitting progressive Congress people, they should be building their own shit. They should be working with their constituent services. They should build a program that people can copy to put them in front of their own constituents as incumbents, and they should be running for re-election the minute they get elected. They should immediately start running for re-election. They should have the best constituent services in Congress. They should be ubiquitous in their districts. They should be working their fucking ass off. But Justice Democrats should just be looking for people to challenge Democrats. Don't try to have like 4 or 5 popular celebrity leftists in Congress that you're sitting there trying to defend all the time. Those progressive Democrats should be defending themselves, and you should be looking for 100 opportunities to pick off centrists, pick off corporate AIPAC fucking congresspeople. They should be on the defense constantly for being right wing. That's what you should be focusing on. If you sit there and try to play defense, you're going to get overwhelmed. You need to be on offense. How do we get rid of PACs? Pack the Supreme Court. The more AIPAC buys congressional seats, the more people will be aware not to make the soft pair. Yeah, well, exactly. That's so true. Like, people are already reacting against it. We have an opportunity with social media, with alternative media. As more and more people are turning away from traditional media and towards alternative forms of media, the effectiveness of things like AIPAC is actually going to decline because the effectiveness of their paid advertising is going to decline.
Say the kinds of things that would make them unelectable in a district. She what did she outperform Kamala Harris by in her district? Like 50 points or something? Yeah. It's got to be actually a modern day, and you could stretch modern back 150 years to like the advent, post-Civil War of like the Democrats and the Republicans. Like it has, I'd be hard pressed to find, in a competitive race with a Republican running, any district where the top ticket performed so terribly, finished in 3rd place or something. In Dearborn, Kamala finished 3rd. But in the district as a whole did terribly, whereas Tlaib just romped and won it in a landslide. So I think that, she is certainly persona non grata among a huge portion of the Democratic Party, and definitely close to 100% of the Republican Party. I wouldn't be surprised if they were pushed. The Republicans were pushed to boot her off committees, boot Ilhan Omar. Ilhan Omar was removed from the Foreign Relations Committee already. So I would imagine that both of them will be, very much in the crosshairs and will be handed up to AIPAC as tribute of like, okay, look, here's a couple things we did for you, because it's. To them, it's cost free. Like the Republican base, would send them to Guantanamo if they could. And, I don't think there's going to, the Democrats couldn't protect him if they wanted to, and most of them probably don't want to.
Well, on that, I mean, I'm curious about what like level of strength we think exists within like the squad right now in Congress and just in politics in general.
APAC doesn't like AOC. They just don't waste their money on AOC because they can't beat her. So they just give her a pass because they can't beat her. It's not, they went after the people they thought they could beat, and they also thought they could beat Summer Lee and they failed. So like, and when they fail, they try to pretend like they didn't fail. Like AIPAC is about intimidation, not actual effectiveness. They also went after Bernie Sanders. Actually, Bernie Sanders is the first person they went after. The Democratic Majority for Israel, their first person they went after when that PAC was formed was Bernie Sanders in the Iowa caucus. This was their first ad. Let me show you their first ad. DMFI ad in Iowa against Bernie. Let's see if I can even find it, because it's all this shit gets hidden. See if this looks like a pro-Israel ad to you. There's a story on it featured in the ad. Okay, here it is. By the way, look at what this ad is titled. This was an AIPAC group doing a super PAC attack of Bernie Sanders in Iowa. Look at what the ad is called. Electable.
The most important thing is we have to beat Trump.
We've seen the damage that Trump and the Republican Congress have done.
I doubt if Bernie Sanders can beat Trump.
I like Bernie. I think he has great ideas. But Michigan, Pennsylvania, Iowa, they're just not going to vote for a socialist.
I do have some concerns about Bernie Sanders' health, considering the fact that he did have a heart attack.
I think it's very important that the Democrats nominate somebody that can beat Trump.
I don't feel as though Bernie Sanders would do well against Donald Trump.
I just don't think Bernie can beat Trump.
DMFI PAC is responsible for the content of this advertising. Responsible for the DMFI.
I just don't.
Bernie Sanders would do well.
DMFI is Democratic Majority for Israel. Did they attack him for his Israeli position? Did they say, wow, Bernie Sanders isn't strong enough on Israel? But isn't that interesting? Like that's how those ads work. That's how those Israeli, organizations work. They're not making arguments based on like the policies that they want these Congress people to support and getting majority support for these Congress people. Basically, what they do is they understand that if they like intervene in a race, and they make it about something completely different than the position they actually want people to adopt. They don't want democratic legitimacy for supporting Israel. They don't give a shit about democratic majority for supporting Israel no matter what they do. They understand the corruption that they can foment by... the elites are going to understand it. The Congress people are going to understand it. Their campaign staffs are going to understand it. But the regular people don't know that ad is actually an organization from Israel. One of the things I would like to do is I would like to make ads like that illegal and punishable by death. And the reason why that is because that is fundamentally a perversion of democracy. It is fundamentally a corruption of the discourse. If you're a group, you should only be allowed to make ads about your positions and try to persuade people on that position. Okay? You should not be able to go, this is the child molester PAC, and they want to elect somebody who is a DGGer because they know that the DGGers are going to be more friendly to lowering age of consent, but then they make ads that are like, NAMBLA wants you to know how electable they are. Okay? You motherfuckers, that's not allowed, all right? You have to make ads on your disgusting position so everybody understands that voting for the candidate you support is a support of that position, so that people can make informed decisions. I personally hate fucking political ads. Actually, Jared, thank you for the 5-tier ones personally, but there's gonna have to be some amount of communication between politicians and, the political issues of the day.
Right, because obviously the Bush and the Bowman losses are, very significant, right? And it felt, I'll speak for myself. It felt like between 2018 and 2020 that this was just going to be an ever-growing faction within the Democratic Party, and by 2024 we might be sitting with an even larger bloc. The opposite's happening. They're losing members. So I'm just curious. Obviously, we're trying to look into the future, but what kind of strength do you think exists within that bloc? To be able somebody like Talib say, look, you can't unseat me. AOC, also having similar things where people voted for Trump and AOC. It would be very interesting to see how she sort of takes that into political practice. But I'm just curious, your thoughts on their strength and their cohesiveness going into this next session.
I think it's a completely open question. I mean, I think they'll have basically no strength. Is certainly in a Republican-dominated Washington, and in the House of Representatives, they are at best an afterthought. They're a nuisance at this point. Going forward, AOC's role is going to be interesting in the Democratic Party because, she is becoming really well liked by normie Democrats. Who many of them went from being very skeptical of her because they associated her with the Bernie wing, which they blamed for costing Donald Trump the presidency, and now that doesn't seem to that has not rubbed off on her, or she has been able to shed it one way or the other. So I think she's going to be in the mix when it comes to names of leaders of the Democratic Party broadly, not just the kind of left wing of the party. So then that'll leave people over in the left wing of the party saying, well, are you still with us? Are you leading us? Or do you have a bigger role right now? And if you have a bigger role, then who takes over the Sanders legacy when Sanders moves on? Because that's not obvious at this point.
Yeah, and well, that's the thing, that calculation is interesting, because when she does the thing of Kamala Harris is working tirelessly for a ceasefire, the idea is, I think, theoretically, that will benefit her some way. Either Harris will obviously work and get a ceasefire, or the party will at least reward her loyalty in some way. But if the party is extremely weak, right, then it doesn't look, then the calculation compared to, well, should I, say, and just today she's going at, say, hey, if we're going to have a conversation about special interest groups that are force us to take unpopular positions, let's maybe start that conversation with AIPAC. And so it is interesting, because I do think which way to go, even from a self-interested standpoint, is not clear to me.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. And as I'm sure you saw, today she's getting dragged for being anti-Semitic, for singling out AIPAC. Which, AIPAC really wants it.
Which, by the way, and this is why I try to talk to people, this is one of the problems I have with Hassan. You want me to criticize Hassan? I'm going to criticize Hassan. Hassan is, and I think this also applies to Chapo as well. They have this desire to have just this sort of aloof, I'm cool and aloof, right? I don't like AOC. I've got some criticisms of AOC. I'm not excited about AOC. AOC is cringe. It's like bringing on Edgermentum onto their podcast or their stream because he's 21 years old and he's a shit poster. Edgermentum doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. AOC is cringe. So fucking what? All right? Yeah, she has some bad votes. Yeah, she's associated. My criticism of AOC is she's entirely too close to the Elizabeth Warren nonprofits of DC. That's a structural criticism I have of her. But when she comes out there and says AIPAC is a problem, we don't need to be in her replies going, oh my God, I can't believe you're criticizing AIPAC after you voted present on the Iron Dome 3 years ago. Soy face. What the fuck do you think you're even doing? What the fuck are you doing? What do you think you're doing? What do you think you're proving? Who do you think you're impressing? What do you think you're doing? Do you want her not to criticize AIPAC? Do you want her to resign and get replaced by a fucking hyper-Zionist? What are you even doing? AOC is way to my right. So fucking what? You know who's my enemy? AIPAC. If AOC wants to fight AIPAC, then I'm going to help AOC fight AIPAC. When Cori Bush wants to fight AIPAC, I'm going to help Cori Bush fight AIPAC. When Jamal Bowman is fighting AIPAC, I'm going to support Jamal Bowman. I'm not going to step back and go, oh, he wasn't with me 100%, so when he loses, it's not my loss. It's your fucking loss, okay? You ate that loss. I ate that loss. We all ate that loss. So, grow the fuck up. Hassan defends AOC. I agree that Hassan defends AOC. Definitely have seen a lot of criticisms from Chapo, especially if you want to delete Hassan from that. This is mostly pointed at Chapo, honestly. It is what it is.
Both ways. AIPAC wants to be able to spend more money than anybody else and do it in a unique way, but not be spoken of in a unique way, because that would be anti-Semitic. And so, and one of the people going after her was one of the Zionists, like liberal Zionists who would like, she'd gone on.
Hassan is constantly defending AOC and spent a bunch of time when she voted on the messaging bill, explaining it wasn't the same bill, and said he did not agree with the messaging bill, but that everyone attacking her on Twitter was wrong. I didn't know about that. I was fine. I didn't know about that. I think that AOC is actually supportive of, or Hassan is supportive of AOC. So delete Hassan's name from that. I should have put Hassan in the same category as the other type of Twitter influencer leftist that I'm talking about.
You saw this, right? Svital.
This was one of the times we criticized her. Like, who is this? Yeah. What are we?
Is there an argument to be made that we should be pushing politicians like AOC through critique in the same way we tried to push Harris to the left? You got to give me a second, because that question is like extremely frustrating to hear. It's extremely psychically damaging question. The problem that we have on the left is that we lack institutions. We lack institutions that have the heft and the weight to demand and command obedience. We also have a social media obsession culture, which is inherently individualistic and anarchistic. And one of the problems that we have with something like online leftist influencers is that they don't know how to operate in a coherent legislative fashion, which is understanding what a bourgeois democracy is and operating within those bounds. There's this desire to produce content, which is an imperative of social media. And a desire to produce content means that you have to start commenting on everything that happens. And that requires you, and one of the things that you start commenting on is every single vote, no matter how meaningless or ineffectual, and you're constantly looking for places where you could position yourself as the most left, the most correct, the best on every micro fucking bureaucratic decision that's being made that fundamentally doesn't fucking matter. And you think you're doing something. You think you're doing something because, aha, I found out that AOC voted present on the Iron Dome, which is why you shouldn't like AOC on Twitter. You should like me on Twitter. I found the vote where she betrayed us. She is no longer the left. I am the left. Like my tweets. Follow me on Insta. Follow my Patreon. I am the leftist that you've been waiting for. My posts are never wrong. Like, that is what is being created. I know it's funny for me to say this because I am a left-wing commentator and I want you to follow me and I want you to, hit the subscribe button and everything. But I am trying to create you people into effective political agents. That is what I see my job. My job is to make a news commentary show where you come in here interested in left-wing things with left-wing opinions, and then you leave my show and you become an actual left-winger. You go from being an intellectual left-winger or interested in politics for entertainment, and you leave my stream and you start becoming someone who is actually effective at doing something. And so your question is very frustrating because the question is incredibly bad, but it's an incredibly good bad. It's bad in such a way that is incredibly understandable, but also incredibly frustrating because I know how much work I have to do. It's not that you're a bad person. It's not that you're stupid. It's that your question is more a reflection of just how stupid the online left is. And here's the thing. A lot of people like to attack the online left. They like to go, the online left this, the online left that. I fucking hate that. I think it is counterproductive. I think it is brand signaling. I think it is worthless individualism. If you're a left-winger and you're online, you are the online left. Every time somebody starts attacking the online left, and then you say, are you left wing? And they're like, yes, they are doing unintentional wrecker shit. And because they want to be an individual. I am one of the good ones. I am the pick-me of online leftists. Online leftists, bad, boo, hiss. Except for me, I'm the right one. I'm the good one. And that is the climate we're in. We're in this climate of continual brand production. Everyone is a brand now. Everyone is expressing how they are the most pure, the most intellectual, the most correct, the bestest leftist there is. Follow me, like those comments. subscribe, hit the bell, and the down there part. Like, that is fucking worthless. You don't want AOC to vote present on the Iron Dome vote. You need to be part of an organization that makes the Iron Dome vote a key vote, who calls AOC up and says, hey, this is Mike, the political director of the Democratic Socialists of America, and we're flagging the Iron Dome vote as a key vote. If you vote yes, we will not endorse you. It will heavily rank against our endorsement. We will withdraw our canvassers. We will withdraw our money. If you fuck with us, there will be consequences. And also, that political director can look at that Iron Dome vote present and go, that didn't matter. The Iron Dome was going to pass anyway. That vote is meaningless. It passed by 200 votes. Who gives a shit? AOC is with us on this, and this. We could always call her up. We could always meet her chief of staff. We could always get our bills advanced. I don't give a shit. So instead of having influencers individually going, I caught her on this vote. She's the fucking betrayer of the left. What a cringe lord. AOC bad. You have an organization that is collective, that is making decisions, that actually has weight behind it, that can actually pressure people, can actually intimidate legislators, like AIPAC does. Do you think AIPAC does that? Do you think AIPAC Zionists are like, I can't believe that Jared Mousewitz didn't vote for this bill, but I'm tweeting at Jared Mousewitz. I've got the Zionists. I gotta push him to the right on Zionism by tweeting. Or do they have a gigantic fucking organization that intimidates these people? That is what we need. A Diet Coke comrade, thank you for the 5 tier 1. Sorry for peaking the shitty mic. The point is, we were part of a movement called the Uncommitted Movement. We were supporters of that movement to try to get Kamala Harris to move to the left. I'm a commentator trying to get more legitimacy and more supporters and more viewers. That is why I have the positions that I have. I'm trying to build a movement. Eventually, I'm going to go to DSA and I'm going to say, hey, all of you've joined DSA, right? It's time to elect me to this position. Come to the DSA meeting. We're going to be doing this. And then I'm going to move myself up in that organization because I'm going to have the thousands of you in DSA already to say, yes, give Mike power. That is the long-term plan. The long-term plan is to build these organizations and make them more effective. And then we're going to work with other like-minded organizations like unions. I want to see Sean Fain rising up. I want more left-wingers to take positions of authority in other unions. I want to push more reformists in different unions and we're going to organize new unions. And I want us to create a block of the real left that actually can call these people up on the phone and say, hey, we got you elected. This is a key vote for us. Don't vote for this. That is how you get these people pressured. It is not by going, actually, AOC isn't a leftist. She betrayed us. And that's why she's such a sellout. She's such a fucking sellout. Anyway, follow my Patreon. That's not how you do it. I think a lot of chat can better understand the difference between mobilization and organization.
Becoming conscious is linked to mobilization and organization, something we mentioned last year. We must make clear distinctions between mobilizers and organizers. To be an organizer, you must be a mobilizer, but being a mobilizer doesn't make you an organizer. Much confusion is to be found here. Malcolm X was a great mobilizer. He was a great organizer. Martin Luther King was a great mobilizer. He was not a great organizer. These facts can be easily seen from King and Malcolm. When Malcolm went to a place, he left a mosque. When King went to demonstrations, he broke down desegregation and he moved on. As a matter of fact, King was not concerned with organization to the point that even though he was the most popular Baptist preacher in America, without the shadow of a doubt, and probably beyond the shadow of a doubt the most loved, he could not become president of the National Baptist Convention. Yeah, so many of them. The National Baptist Convention. As a matter of fact, if my memory serves me correctly now, and I remember it was Muhammad Speaks that carried the article on the front page in 1964 when King tried to become president of the National Baptist Convention. There was so much confusion there that a minister was actually pushed off the stage and died in the struggle. Yeah. And of course, King lost. The man who won was a reactionary man by the name of Jackson. He never did nothing for the people, never cared about the people, just was a pork chop minister who used their money to put gas in his big Cadillac. But he was organized. But he was organized. We say that we must come to know the difference between mobilization and organization because the enemy will use mobilization to demobilize us. Mobilization is very easy. Very, very easy. Because since we're people who are instinctively ready to respond against acts of injustice, anytime there's one little act of injustice, we can blow it up and we'll find people who come and make some mass demonstration around it. Miss Sally lost her job. Let's rally. She'll get her job back. People will come and rally. So-and-so got kicked out of school because the teacher's unjust. The people will come and rally. They will come to rally at issues. And this is what mobilization does. It mobilizes people around issues. Those of us who are revolutionary are not concerned with issues. We're concerned with the system. The difference must be properly understood. The difference must be properly understood. Mobilization usually leads for reform action, not to revolutionary action. If we would look scientifically at the October 16th million and more march, we would see clearly that this was a mobilized event, not an organized event. We must know clearly the difference between mobilization and organization. One of the characteristics of mobilization is that it is temporary. Organization is permanent and eternal. Clear differences must be made because the unconscious can usually be captured easily around one-issue items, around mobilization items, but it's hard to catch them around organization. But these unconscious must be brought to organization. We must transform mobilization to organization. We say the enemy will come and use mobilization to demobilize us. Many brothers and sisters who've been to the million and more march will say to you, I was there. Well, what are you doing today, my sister? I was there. There weren't too many sisters out there, but you know, with a million brothers together, you know where I had to be. I was there. Yes. And then, of course, you find brothers, yeah, I was there. I helped you. What are you doing today, brother? If we're not careful, we allow mobilization to become events. The struggle is never an event. It's a process, a continual, eternal process.
There you have it. Stokely Carmichael, wise words. And that's what I'm trying to teach you. I'm trying to teach you, yes, organize around issues. Use mobilization and channel that to organization. We should have learned that. I hope you saw that lesson learned in the George Floyd protests, right? Millions of people went out on the streets. Millions of people took clubs and tear gas and rubber bullets and arrests and beatings to protest for George Floyd. But where did that energy go? What was delivered for those people, for those millions of people who put their lives and their honor and their jobs and their reputations on the line? What was the result? Because that was mobilized, not organized. And Joe Biden won, and what did he do? He raised the funding of cops. There was no George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. There was no redistribution of wealth and power. The police got more money. I hope this isn't a hard lesson to learn. And so my criticisms of AOC are my criticisms of AOC. I give them from the position of a commentator. But the purpose of my contributions are not to just be in the cacophony of worthless Twitter comments. It is for you to see what I say before the events happen. And then when the events happen, as according to what I said, you say, well, maybe Mike's analysis makes sense. That is why I put it in the ether, so that you show up and you say, Mike's analysis makes sense. Mike was right. Let us try some of his proposals in the future. Let us work in concert. Let us be organized in the future. It's a slow build. It's a process. Life experience has taught me that things do not come quickly and they do not come easily. If they do, either quickly or easily, then you've been duped, or you're working according to someone else's plan, not your own. Didn't Obama start a grassroots organization in 2008 that was taken over by the DNC and shelved off by not falling for neoliberal politicians? No one gives a real fuck about Palestine like they claim to. I've been thrown off Congress every damn day for a year protesting genocides. These idiots that chat and say we can't have anything. Have you tried? They want us to like take it like they are. What are you talking about? Your problem is you think protesting is a means to an end. Or I'm sorry, you think protesting is an end in and of itself. Protesting is a strategy. There's nothing special about it. It's a strategy. For what? You protest for what? Media attention. You put boots on the ground. You create a public protest so cameras are pointed at you and your message gets across. Outside the normal channels of mass media. You get the attention of mass media by doing a protest. It's just a strategy. It's a media strategy at that. It is basic shit. Honestly, if you think protests deliver results, you're wrong. They are one element of a strategy. Somebody been taught, I guess you were taught this in high school, that protests happen, question mark, question mark, question mark, result. You can't draw a line from a protest to a result without a lot of steps in between. What are the steps? You're not taught the steps. Why aren't you taught the steps? Because if you know the steps, then you can get results. What's the point of our society? To defend the status quo. Do you think they're gonna teach you, the proles, the proletariat, how to take power from the bourgeoisie in the bourgeoisie society school? You think they're gonna go there and be like, do this, do that. You'll take money and power from the rich. That's gonna be taught to you? The effective strategy to take the power from the wealthy is going to be taught to you in public school or private school? You've gotta be a little bit more intelligent. You gotta be a little bit smarter. Bro, why do you keep yelling at us? I'm yelling at something that is, these are things that I've been talking about for a long, long time. And I think a lot of people get talked to like they're a swaddled up baby. And if I were to try to talk to you like that, I would lose my mind. So I talk to you like you're an adult. If adult conversations are not for you, the door is right there. All right, let's keep going.
We really do in here.
Which is
good faith.
Which is similar to what
thank you.
You were talking about, the similar dynamic, just in an opposite direction, and saying like, okay, if I do this, it's going to earn me some goodwill, some political capital that I'll be able to use, in the future. When I'm trying to do some type of reconciliation around something, like it'll show that my critiques are coming from a place of good faith, and so she does that, pisses off her entire base, and then the first second that Spitali gets a chance, kicks her right in the face with it, and kind of humiliates her for even, making the move in the first place.
Well, Ryan Grimm, the books are We Got People and The Squad. I reread them this summer.
Cool.
And, I think really good overview of recent history on this stuff that I think people kind of operate as if they remember it, but I mean, it must be maddening to you because there are certain things that aren't mystified, and we can operate off of facts. But yeah, check those books out.
Yeah, you can actually know what happened in some of these cases. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Ryan.
Thank you.
Yeah, you got it. Take it easy.
Oh no, Chad. Okay, thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Left Reckoning. I was on there a couple weeks ago.